The old house on Orchard Road was exactly as I'd imagined, isolated, grand, and steeped in a silence so thick it felt like a physical presence. My job as live-in caretaker was straightforward: keep the pipes from freezing, the dust from accumulating, and report any significant damage. Mr. Albright, the owner, lived overseas and only visited once a year. He told me to make myself at home, but to avoid the attic. Too many memories up there, he'd sighed over the phone, and too much sentimental junk. Best left undisturbed. I unpacked my few boxes into the small caretaker's apartment in the East Wing, a cozy, modern addition that felt strangely detached from the rest of the sprawling, century-old structure. The air in the main house was cool and carried the scent of aged wood and something else, something subtly floral and dusty, like dried roses left in a forgotten book. The first few days passed in a quiet rhythm of chores and exploration. I found on 8 empty rooms, dark paneled studies with rows of untouched books, and a grand ballroom where the moonlight streamed through tall windows like pale, ghostly dancers. It was a beautiful place, if a little melancholic. My routine was simple. I'd wake with the dawn, make coffee, and begin my rounds. I'd check the furnace in the cellar, ensure all windows were latched, and dust the furniture in the main living areas. It was a peaceful existence, almost monastic, but after a week, the house started to feel less empty. Small things, at first. A faint whisper of a lullaby I'd catch just on the edge of hearing, usually when I was in the nursery. Mr. Albright hadn't mentioned a nursery, but there it was, tucked away on the second floor, opposite the master bedroom. It was sparse, a faded wallpaper pattern of clouds and stars, an old rocking horse, and a small, empty cradle. I'd find myself lingering there, drawn by a strange, quiet sadness that clung to the air. Then there was the temperature. Certain spots in the house would turn suddenly cold, a pocket of frigid air in an otherwise comfortably heated room. I'd shiver, pull my sweater tighter, and blame it on an old house's draftiness. But the cold spots were always in the same places: the nursery, the foot of the grand staircase, and a specific spot on the landing just outside the attic door. The lullaby became more distinct. I'd be scrubbing a floor, humming to myself, and then I'd hear it, a clear, mournful tune sung by a woman with a voice like a sigh. It was never loud, always just enough to make the hairs on my arms prickle. It seemed to come from the nursery, or sometimes from just beyond the closed attic door. I found myself increasingly drawn to that door, even though Mr. Albright had explicitly warned me away. It was a heavy, dark wood door, unpainted, with a plain iron latch. No lock, just a simple latch. Curiosity, as they say, kills. Or at least, it unsettles profoundly. I'd stand there, listening to the silence that seemed to emanate from behind it, a silence that felt different from the rest of the house's quiet. This silence felt heavy, watchful, as if holding its breath. One evening, after I'd heard the lullaby clearer than ever, echoing from behind that door, I found myself with my hand on the latch. My fingers felt like ice. I didn't open it that night. My training as a caretaker, and frankly, my natural caution, held me back. Mr. Albright's instruction about too many memories and sentimental junk kept replaying in my mind. But the next day, the cold intensified. Not just specific spots, but the entire upper landing felt like an icebox. I saw my breath, a thin cloud, for a fleeting moment. I felt a soft touch on my arm, like a spider web, but there was nothing there. It wasn't malicious, not threatening, but it was undeniably present, a gentle, sorrowful caress. I went to the nursery, and the rocking horse was gently rocking back and forth, as if someone had just left it. No wind, no open windows. I stood frozen, watching it. It rocked for a full minute, then slowly, agonizingly, came to a stop. The quiet in the room was absolute then, broken only by the frantic thump of my own heart. That evening, I heard her calling, not words, but a drawn-out, mournful sound, a woman's voice full of deep, aching despair. It wasn't angry, not accusatory, just utterly heartbroken. It came from behind the attic door, and it was getting closer. I tried to distract myself, read a book in my apartment, but every page turned was accompanied by that haunting sound, growing steadily louder. It echoed in the silence of the vast house, finding every corner, every shadow. I knew then that whatever was in the attic wasn't just memories. It was a presence, and it was distressed, and it wanted something, or someone. My unease had shifted to something more profound, a sense of deep pity mixed with creeping terror. The line between undisturbed and unresolved felt very thin. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. The house wasn't just asking me to listen, it was begging me to understand. With a profound sense of foreboding and a strange, almost compulsive pull, I walked to the attic door. The mournful sounds had ceased, replaced by a profound silence, but the air around the door was thick with a palpable sorrow. I reached for the latch, my hand trembling. It lifted with an old, protesting creak. I pushed the door open, slowly, bracing myself. The attic was exactly as Mr. Albright had described, a repository of forgotten things, trunks, shrouded furniture, yellowed photographs. But it wasn't dusty and neglected. It was orderly, almost pristine, as if someone had just tidied it. And in the very center, bathed in the pale light from a small dormer window, stood a crib. A beautiful, antique wooden crib covered with a delicately embroidered linen sheet. Next to it, on a small, round table, was a single, withered rose and a faded baby's shoe. The air here was not cold. It was warm, almost comforting, but saturated with an overwhelming grief. I walked further into the attic, my eyes fixed on the crib. As I approached, a wave of unbearable sorrow washed over me, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. It felt like a physical weight. I reached out, my fingers brushing the linen sheet. It was soft, almost new, and then I saw it, tucked beneath a small silk blanket within the crib. Not a toy, not a doll, but a meticulously preserved bundle of baby clothes. And a tiny, hand-stitched sampler, Elena, born May 12, 1904. Taken too soon. My breath hitched. This wasn't just memories or sentimental junk. This was a shrine. And the cold, the lullabies, the mournful cries, they weren't random. They were a mother's endless grief, forever lingering, forever searching. I understood why Mr. Albright had avoided this room. He hadn't wanted to disturb the memory, but more accurately, he hadn't wanted to disturb her. The presence here was not malevolent. It was a heartbroken mother, eternally bound to her child. I didn't hear the whisper until I was turning to leave, my heart heavy. It was gentle, almost imperceptible, a voice woven from sorrow and longing. "You found her." I froze. The air around the crib shimmered, a faint, almost translucent outline of a woman dressed in a long, old-fashioned gown, standing over the crib, her head bowed. She didn't look at me. She simply reached out a shimmering hand, stroking the empty air above the bundled clothes. The grief in the room, which had been so crushing, softened, replaced by a profound sense of quiet peace, as if a long-awaited understanding had finally settled. I spent the rest of my time in that house, not avoiding the attic, but visiting it. I'd sit quietly, sometimes reading, sometimes just listening to the silence. The cold spots vanished. The lullabies ceased. The mournful cries were gone. I understood then that she hadn't needed to be disturbed. She had needed to be acknowledged. When Mr. Albright finally returned, he found me by the crib, a fresh rose in the tiny, faded baby's shoe. He looked at me, then at the crib, and a tear traced a path down his weathered cheek. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I knew then that some secrets aren't meant to be kept. Some griefs are meant to be shared, even across generations, even across the veil. And sometimes, the only way a spirit can find rest is for someone, anyone, to simply bear witness to their sorrow. Thank you for listening. If this story found you in the dark, subscribe and turn on notifications. A new tale waits every night.